I wish you a happy time zone, Helldivers. No news today, though I imagine it's the same as it ever was. People getting torn into bags of shredded cheese on Oshune, which is kind of the problem that I wanted to delve into today. It's as the title says, this kind of sucks. You see, I actually do play other games besides Helldivers. Things like The Rising, the fantastic emotional journey that is Ghost of Tsushima, and most recently, The Riftbreaker. And just seeing how everything fits together so well on Riftbreaker kind of opened my eyes and made me ask myself, what am I doing? Allow me to explain. This video is going to serve as my expression of opinion in regard to the latest Into the Unjust patch. And it is totally fine if you agree or disagree. In fact, I think I prefer the disagreement. It makes the conversation better if you ask me. Well, the long and short of it is that I didn't like it. I really did not like it. In fact, it has me honestly considering hanging up my cape and heading off for greener pastures, acting as only a collaboration partner for the Freedom Alliance once every couple of months when they get together. Yeah, I really did not like it. And all of that centers around player agency. I had spoken for some months about how suicidal, ridiculous, and idiotic it was to go underground in interminate tunnels. Helldivers are not heroes. They are not even infantry for that matter. They are artillery observers. Their primary raison d'etre is marking enemy bases and troop gatherings for air and orbital strike so that hostiles can be eliminated quickly and efficiently. You take all that away, all you're left with is a bunch of morons with capes and guns that they very much wish were bigger. Most people tended to agree with my take on that, and the conversation usually ended there. I did not imagine Arrowhead would actually, do that. And what happened? Exactly as I said, Oshune has accumulated more bodies than Malevolon Creek, and it's not because of the Hive Lords or Dragon Roaches, whose unfairness I will get into here in just a little bit. It's because we had our identity stripped away as Helldivers in favor of becoming the Imperial Fluffing Guard. Because that is all we are without orbitals, airstrikes, and sentries. In fact, I think we rank beneath Sea Marines now because they actually have better supply chains if orbital supply pods are compromised for whatever reason. My biggest issue with Into the Unjust, it's not the difficulty. It's that I feel that all the fun, amazing, stratagem-related stuff that we used to be able to do is not applicable in the content that the developer says that we are supposed to be playing right now. If you were someone who adored acting as an artillery coordinator or a radio operator, and loved watching massive bug hives vanish in the explosive plume of a 380 with just a little bit of napalm for flavor and garnish, a game for everyone is a game for no one, and you just got voted off the island. Yeah, that phrase kind of sucks when the game isn't for you anymore, doesn't it? This is especially startling because it runs completely counter to everything that Arrowhead said about stratagems last year. This is a quote from Balancing the Firepower in Helldivers 2 on screen currently. First, I'd like to speak to the general power of primary weapons. Many have commented that they are not powerful enough and are unable to deal with all of the enemies either by the amount of ammunition required or their raw DPS. This is very much intentional. You need to rely on your stratagems and the stratagems of your team to deal with all of the enemies effectively. This statement reinforces my belief that Helldivers are not superheroes, but rather artillery observers. Fighting in megacities made orbitals and eagles lean towards the side of the unreliable. Your super destroyer needed to relocate, and it might miss the window to strike the enemy when they were in proper position, or hit a building in the way by accident and miss entirely. Difficult and clunky as heck, but doable. Stratagems were still mostly viable. Though, if I were present in the boardroom meeting of Arrowhead, the first words out of my mouth would have been, "You need to issue a dummy stratagem specifically meant to move a super destroyer into position for all players for free in megacity environments so the ship can strike the beacon location for real when it is needed." The execution of this would be to prime the dummy stratagem, throw it, and the super destroyer would relocate such that it could strike that exact location with real ordnance when the player was ready to call it in. A lot of Gatling and gas strikes whiffed because we do not have this ability. Within the tunnels of Oshiune, any stratagem that requires the use of open sky is not accessible, which I do believe, if I am not mistaken, is all of them. Sure, you can take some blues in there, like the recoilless, guard dogs, or maybe a mech, but the lion's share of a diver's offensive options are off the menu, and all you are left with is a primary weapon that is, by design, not powerful enough or with sufficient ammunition to deal with all of the enemies therein. Which I imagine is where an awful lot of the love for the Coyote is coming from. It's really not a piece of stellar engineering. It's really just a weapon that does exactly what it is supposed to. It's not a sexy little anti-everything weapon. It's a piece of driftwood that players are clinging to in order to keep from drowning in the turbulent seas. I get that Arrowhead wants to tap the Deep Rock Galactic community on the shoulder with a wink and a nudge, but when it comes down to the execution of all of this, they are hit hard in the face with the fact that they forgot an awful lot of the mechanics that make DRG doable in the first place. Specifically, drill pods. Why in the name of liberty are EATs, commandos, support weapons, reinforcements, and supply hell pods not fitted with drills that can bust through the roof of a hive to assist a Helldiver team under duress? Why can orbital cannons not be retuned so that their shells explode on a fuse after impact like Navy artillery shells have done since the time of the Second World War? Fire a 380 into a terminate tunnel and watch the shells crash through the roof. Problem solved. You could even do this with a 500 kg. It's called the bunker buster method, and the United States is very proud of this. Sentries fitted with drill pods would do amazingly in such a close quarters environment, come to think of it. It would add to your player's agency, remove a handicap, really get DRG's attention, and add to the all-important factor of immersion and coolness. Be honest, all of you out there who already loved tunnel fighting, you will use your liberty-loving minds over something like this, don't deny it. Agency is important. Agency is everything. Think back to when the Incineration Corps attacked Popley, and we succeeded at thwarting their nefarious efforts through the skillful use of the DSS, community focus, and sheer willpower. Think back to when we secured the defense of Mort by seconds. It was a hard fight where the outcome was in doubt, but we made it happen anyway. We did that. Our agency affected the outcome of the story. Think back to the children of Super Citizen Ants, our Alliance Order heroes. We turned the good that we did in-game into good in real life. Because that's what heroes do. That's what heroes have the agency to do. We made a democracy-damned difference. Which brings me to my next point. I know that the Hive Lord has had a heap of praise tossed on it like roses before our prized bullfighter, but I have to take one look at something like that and just laugh. It is so absurdly large that something like this going out of its way to kill us is like a human being body slamming an ant. The fact that this thing is aware of us at all, it's gotta have hearing that would make a bat deaf. It's also dreadfully unimaginative. According to my friend Roy, some parts of the Hive Lord are covered in AV-10 armor, which means that it cannot be damaged by any means. A massively armored, ginormously huge enemy that can kill you instantly, and you can't get away from it. Heck, if you stuck this thing in the sky, it'd even look like a Leviathan. I had this whole spiel prepared on how I would reduce the Hive Lord's size to 1/10 of what it currently is, move the Rupture Warrior's instant unavoidable attack over to the Lord, keep the ready of its acid spray, and give it the ability to call in Terminids of its own, and that's when it struck me. That is exactly how Omega String creatures are handled in Riftbreaker. Tough, yes. They have so many hit points. Unbeatable? No, not even close. Pretty much any weapon will damage them at least a little bit because, that's how bullets work. Especially at the hands of an imaginative player. Imagination is a weapon, and those who fail to make use of it tend to die first. Don't let anyone tell you different. Once again, taking a ride in my magic van to the fantasy realm of yore, where I am on the board of Arrowhead, I would encourage the rule of 3, in that every major problem, every boss enemy, would have at least 3 paths to fix it. In the case of the Hive Lord, activating several LiDAR stations would triangulate its position within the AO to the super destroyers in orbit, who would hammer the ever-loving bejesus out of it. And if they didn't kill it entirely, its armor would be completely busted off, and the squad on the ground could handle it. This one makes sense because Hive Lords are so hilariously large that it feels like the Super Destroyer formation should be fighting this thing instead of us. Option 2. Trick it into running into something detrimental. A single anti-tank mine might not do much, but if a Hive Lord emerges in the middle of a field of them, that'll probably break its nose at the very least. Same thing with making it run into a mountain, a sufficiently large rock, or even the hardened chitin of the Terminid lair itself. Option 3 is currently our only real option in-game, committing to the use of excessive force and heavy firepower from the entire Liberty Forsaken team. The same logic could also be applied to Leviathans, who should always be having problems with SAMs and LiDAR. Why LiDAR? Because I've been scratching my head over why our own Eagles and space superiority fighters are not engaging Leviathans actively shelling civilian targets in megacities. The last time I checked, the DSS had plenty of these. This further reinforces our role as artillery observers and airstrike spotters. We are not superheroes. We are the eyes and ears of the people who actually brought real guns to the fight. And really, I'm sorry. I've got to say it. The whole concept of a massively armored enemy that ignores most of the items in your toolkit that can kill you instantly, it's not a threat. It's not dread, it's not foreboding, it's boring. It's boring, it's lazy, and you shouldn't need to be a massively over-talented sweat machine in order to see Hive Lords as anything more than an annoyance and attacks on your reinforcements. They're a boss creature. They're a spectacle. And the battle against them should be spectacular, not feeling like Joel is once again just trying to win against the player base, because that's sort of what it's feeling like right now. As for the Dragon Roach, this thing has so many problems. From them being able to do this, and do this, and the fact that they just respawn in moments when they're killed. Come on, Arrowhead. Surely you learned that people hated this with Leviathans last May. There's also the fact that by the intended design of these enemies, Hive Lords and Dragon Roaches are not supposed to inhabit the same mission at the same time, with their migration paths changing once every 2 hours. I recall seeing something like that on Discord and could be mistaken, but if that is true, the system is not working as intended. There is also the problem of selective realism. Allow me to read to you from the recent patch note description of this enemy. Rupture Warrior. A product of gloom-induced mutation, the Rupture Warrior has lost the UV-insulating chitin layer that would protect its internal organs from solar radiation damage. Lost the UV-insulating chitin layer. As in speaking of armor. Assuming that the rest of the Rupture strain follows the same mutation, it makes sense, same environment, same mutation. This would mean that they would have less armor, not more. So, why are these gal pals rocking medium armor like a Cinderella dress to the ballroom gala with Prince Charming? Oh, yeah, that's right. Because we are at D11. The Dungeon Master wants to win difficulty. When we are being fired out of pods with no cushioning impact interior, or even insulation for the re-entry heat for that matter, fighting sentient robots with portable railguns and roasting Cthulhu Lovecraftian horror squids with flamethrowers and plasma guns? Realism got off at the last stop, and I have no idea who is driving this bus now. When I hear science fiction and realism in the same sentence, it makes me want to douse the speaker with my cup of liberty so that their brain stops overheating. Realism has no place in science fiction. The rule of cool should govern the day. I mean, look over at Games Workshop and their Space Marines. Yeah, as a development studio, they might have abandoned morality in favor of sheer capitalistic greed, but at least those guys get this concept. I think their orcs run on cool or something. It's called WA, and whatever they believe turns out to be reality. I haven't really looked too much into it. I'm going to be as forthcoming with you as I possibly can, dear listeners. When I saw the results of the 60-day plan, I was optimistic. I thought, now this allows us to do so much more cool stuff. When the DSS Heavy Ordnance was redesigned, I smiled and said, perfect, now Helldivers can control the might of this beast and direct its fire where and when it is needed. When I see us being sent into situations where our stratagems, our lifelines, our very identity as players in Helldivers are just not available for most, if not all, of the mission, I start to question if this is even work in universe lore that Helldivers should be doing. When I see enemies being introduced that can either ignore or cannot be struck by most of our toolkit, I lose that optimism. When I hear tales of players being kicked from squads because their loadout is not the current meta to handle the content in question, after spending most of their first year raging against community-driven meta, that is when I know that Arrowhead has lost the plot. It is a concept called gameplay inflation, where items, skills, and mechanics, while left unchanged, are impotent and inert in the face of increasingly power-creepy enemies. And much like conflation in the real world, this is not a good thing. Just as power creep for new player items, weapons, and skills in the face of unchanging enemies is not a good thing. Much like everything else, balance is required. If you go in with precision orbital strike, a machine gun sentry, an autocannon, and an Eagle cluster bomb, you stand to do very, very well in a typical Terminated environment. On Oshigure, you're not going to be able to use most of that. It's useless against the Hive Lord, and you are probably going to get turned into a bag of finely shredded mozzarella if you get cornered. Between the tactical debt that Helldivers has accumulated, bringing about dreadful performance, more bugs than fixes in every patch, the god-awful level and enemy design, and the bare-bones mediocre gunplay with primaries made to suck by design, I don't think it is an exaggeration to say that if it was not for the galactic map strategic game, the community involvement, and the ongoing story being told, people probably would have stopped caring about Helldivers a long time ago. Make no mistake, my friends, the game industry has taken note of Helldivers' success, and right now its claim to glory is the fact that no one else has yet replicated the galactic map and the feeling of community immersion. What is going to happen to Helldivers when the first dev team figures out how to replicate that lightning in a bottle and does it better and more responsibly than Arrowhead? Better performance, more storytelling drama, more player agency, tapping into your strengths, fixing your flaws, and eliminating your weaknesses. Do you not not think that they are studying you? Do you not think that the industry has taken notice? Just some stuff to think about.